All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to be talking about the beginning parts of the war. So, we've talked about how the U.S. got involved um, with the war, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Now, we're going to look at what happened right afterwards and basically focus on the year 1942. Okay. So, here's your objectives. Yeah, we're going to create an argument on whether Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066 is justified, because that's one of the things that still to this day people talk about it as, was that the right thing to do? You know, even then, even at that time, was that the right thing to do? Okay, so here is your warm up picture. So again, the warm up picture is from the same artist as the last one. Um, and again, if you look at the cartoon style and you're like, you realize that from a childhood memory, um, it's the same artist. Okay, you more likely are right on who the artist is, and his name is on there actually if you look carefully. So my question to you is this: what is this artist trying to say about the group America First? All right, you see two birds. One of them has a hat, the other one doesn't, and the other one has this, the name America First. So look what he's doing, and tell me this. What is this artist trying to say about that group? Is it doing good, bad, and why do you say that? Okay, so think about it. Write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. So that group, America First, it was a very popular group at that time before the attack on Pearl Harbor. This group was led by an American hero, Charles Lindbergh. This is the first man to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean and things like that. So in the 1930s, people saw him as a true hero. Excuse me. And he was the one who led this group saying, yes, America should not be involved with this war and things like that. That's not our fight, it's not our war. But then when Pearl Harbor happened, this group basically, you never heard from them again. They just basically dissolved. They knew if they continued, people would just turn against them and things like that. So basically did the smart thing, keep their mouth closed, and just went away. Okay. Now, remember, December 7th is when we got attacked by Pearl Harbor. December 11th, Germany and Italy declares war on the U.S. Right? Japan basically declared war when they attacked us. So Germany and Italy, their other partners, on December 11th, decided to make it formal that they're going to go war against us. We did the same thing in return. We declared war on them. Now, here is something that's very um, not talked about that much, which is surprising to me, but it's really happened. January 13th and 14th of 1942, eight ships were blown up by German U-boats right outside Manhattan. You know, that's really close to the US, coastline, right next to Manhattan, and the German U-boats are right there. They could have invaded. They could have sent some troops in and things like that. Who knows? They could have left some spies that we don't know about. So yeah, something that's not really talked about in World War II conversations, which surprises me. All right. Now, within another 2 weeks, 25 tankers along the East Coast, not just near New York, but also near Massachusetts and, um, North Carolina, South Carolina, places like that, they were sunk. By June, 230 ships in total, carrying almost 5 million tons of material, were sunk by German U boats. Okay. Now, what does that mean by material? What's that? Basically, anything that helped Britain and France, whether it was guns, ammunition, tanks, um, uh, steel, iron, wood, fresh water, food, whatever. All this stuff was just being sent over, but it was being sunken by the German U boats. Okay, and to give you a perspective, 5 million tons is basically 10 million pounds. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff that just got destroyed in the middle of the ocean. All right, now, January 1942, Hitler declares the final solution. Now, this is the plan to exterminate the Jewish people from Europe. Kill them any which way you can, torture them, kill them, things like that. Um, Basically, use them as labor force, but as soon as they're not useful anymore, get rid of them. And this is going to go on until his death. Okay. Now, in February 1942, Philip Johnson, this guy in the US, basically suggested I had this radical idea. Why don't we use Navajo Indians to be used as transmitting military messages? You know, and some people were just like, well, how would that work? And they're like, well, yes, I got this plan, I got this plan. But just think about it. The Native American, Navajo, it's not spoken in anywhere else in the world. That language is origin, it's here, it's in the US. No other country knows that language. So why don't we use them? And some people in the military are like, yeah, it's not a bad idea. So these guys would be known as code talkers. Now, still in that same month, February 19th, 1942, uh, President Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066. This order was meant to detain people who were seen as a national risk. Now, who were those people? Was it the Germans? No, not Germans, Americans. Was it the Italian Americans? No, not the Italian Americans. Well, weren't we going to war with them? Sure. But those weren't the risk. The risk was the Japanese American. Yeah, the US felt that the Japanese Americans were more of a risk to national security than German Americans and Italian Americans. And because of that, 110,000 Japanese Americans were forced to leave their homes, quit their jobs, and they were told basically, if you can carry it, you can take it, but anything else, no. So a lot of times these guys had to sell their belongings. They had to just take the essentials, and they were being moved from their home basically to a specific area, which would be somewhere in the middle of our country. Now, March 11th, same year, this guy you see was smoking that little um, pipe right there. That is General Douglas MacArthur. Now, he was ordered by the president to lead the Philippines, but not just leave the Philippines, not just leave the island, but to leave his men there as well. Now, MacArthur didn't want to do that. He loved his men. He really cared about them. But the president said, no, 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 you don't understand. I need you out of there. You. And again, these commanders, these generals, even though they're top generals, they cannot argue with the president because the president is commander in chief. So he leaves and he says, I will return. Right? He promised the people of the Philippines and his soldiers, I will return. Okay, and you're gonna find out later if he does that or not. And once he is in mainland, he is named the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in the Pacific, meaning he is the top guy of everything going on in the Pacific. Okay, Eisenhower is going to be the Supreme Commander of the in Europe, but as for the Pacific, it's going to be him, Douglas MacArthur. Okay, now April 9th, uh, I told you MacArthur had to leave his men in the Philippines, right, with the Filipino soldiers. Well, on April 9th, they got captured by the Japanese. In total, there were 78,000 men, and they were rounded up by the Japanese, and they were forced to march. Um, I forgot what was it, like 92 miles. Now the thing is, well, let me double check this real quick. My bad. It was 92 was 65 miles. So they had to go through 65 miles marching through jungle, and it's hot. It's nasty. There's insects and things like that biting them. And then you got the Japanese soldiers mistreating them and, beating them and shooting them and, things like that. So that's why it was known as the Bataan Death March. Okay. Now, April 18th, the US has a secret plan which they complete, which is to attack Japan. Basically, show Japan, yeah, you creeped on us at Pearl Harbor and attacked us. We can creep up on you and attack you. And that's what happens. Led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, they took 16 B 25 bombers and they went over Japan and they attacked um, four areas. Okay. They attacked four areas: Tokyo, Kobe, Yokohama, and Nagoya. They attacked these places. Now, the thing is, these B 25 bombers didn't have enough fuel to drop the bombs and return safely because, again, the planes had to leave at a long distance away from Japan so that they wouldn't be caught, the ships couldn't be caught by radar and wouldn't be seen. Okay, so some of these planes had to make a crash landing in the water and in China. So back home, the code talkers they start going through training. They're going through stuff like turtle means tank. You know, um, airplane would be like falcon. You know, and so they are training to say these words to know, okay, how are you going to say this word? What is it going to mean in English words and things like that? Again, 420 guys would eventually be deployed in the Pacific. These code talkers would not go into Europe. Their focus was simply on the Pacific. Now, the Battle Coral Sea. This is the first time in history where we have not only a dogfight in the air, but a fight in the ocean. So the dogfight and the battle in the ocean are happening at the same place, same time. And the U.S. wins. We basically have an invading force that goes into Fort Moresby. We take this island, and it's not as an island for um, offensive attack. It's not meant to attack someplace. It's meant that if something happens, our planes and our ships can come back to this island, and then from that island we can defend these guys, protect them. Okay. Now, one of the other really big battles that happened during this time was the Battle of Midway. Okay. Midway is just like the name of it says, it's midway between like the old world, China, Japan, and all them, and the United States. It's right in the middle of the Pacific. Okay, it's a little tiny place, but it is basically midway between those two areas. Now, this is the first time in 350 years that Japan has lost a Navy battle. And when I mean they lose it bad. See, what happened was this: Japan had a plan. They were going to send some um, ships and planes back to Hawaii, back to Pearl Harbor, because they knew we didn't have many ships left over, didn't have many planes. So what they did, their plan was to send a bunch of them over, and then surround the island and basically hold it as hostage, and basically try to get the United States out of the war with that, saying, "Hey, if you don't get out of this war, we're going to kill these hostages." You know. Um, so what happened was our cryptographers deciphered the code, found out what the Japanese were going to do, and we were basically waiting for them at Midway. And we went at it with them, and the United States won. Okay. Japan lost 3,500 men, four carriers, one cruiser ship, and 332 airplanes. The United States, we lost 307 men, one carrier, and 150 planes. So June 21st, 1942, this is another thing that surprising that not many people talk about. But Japanese submarines attacked a military depot at Fort Stevens, Oregon. Now, this is the first time that the United States mainland is attacked since the War of 1812 when the British invaded the United States and burnt down like the White House and stuff and the Capitol building. Since then, nobody attacked us until June 21st, 1942. Uh, August 7th, 1942, the Battle of Guadalcanal begins. The Guadalcanal Island is tiny. It's a small island, but the fighting that went on there took months. It was a full-on land attack, you know, Japanese versus the United States, and we're just going at it. 6 months it took to take this little island, and basically that was the last time Japan really expanded because from this on they didn't really gain anywhere else. Okay, now that's the Pacific. We're gonna jump a little bit to Europe. Now, just like Japan, Germany needs oil, and Germany decides, you know what? Let's go to the Middle East. But instead of going through, Italy and all these places and Yugoslavia and so that, let's go to Africa. So that's what they do. They go into Africa, invade it, especially northern Africa, to go to the Middle East. Okay. Now, the British realize, hey, this is what the Nazis are doing. We have a plan to stop them, but we need America's help. And this is where Operation Torch is going to come in. And you're going to learn more about it next class. But just know that this plan, it's going to have a domino effect in a sense against the Nazis. Okay. Now, by the end of 1942, 35,000 troops have died in battle, and most of them in the Pacific. And again, here's the thing, too. Like I was saying, this African campaign, we haven't even talked about it yet. But our fighting in the Pacific has been going on. A lot of people think that when we, the United States, fought in World War II, it was a start at D-Day. No, guys, we fought in the Pacific first, and then Africa. Okay, so just remember that when you're watching movies and playing video games and stuff like that, or if you're watching TikTok and people start talking about that kind of stuff, like, oh, when the United States joined, we went to D-Day. No, we didn't. There was other battles beforehand. Okay. So here's my question to you. Remember, the United States didn't have many battles, many ships and planes, but at the Battle of Midway, we put them all on the line and we won. My question to you is this: if Japan had won the Battle of Midway and there was no more planes, no more ships that the US had in the Pacific, do you think the Japanese would have tried to invade America, knowing, hey, well, nothing to stop us out here. All the ships that we blew up in Pearl Harbor, they're still getting fixed. The planes are being built. We might as well just take over. Do you think that's what would have happened, or do you think they would have been like, nah, let's not invade the homeland. Let's just stick to the Hawaiian Islands. It's a lot easier to take over than part of America. What do you think? What do you think they would have done? All right. So think about it. Write your response. Okay. But once you're finished, that's it. You're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. All right. So with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.